think we have Umbrella, Rihanna. So let me see I'll play a little bit of the actual final mix so we can.
Umbrella, you can stand under my umbrella. Under my umbrella.
You know, we talked about some of these 80s records that how I think what people can hate on them, but I think a big, thing we learned from that was how warm and how they used filters that just sounded very musical again. And now with tools, it started, not tools, but, virtual synths, I think we lost somehow some of that. I think it's getting better and better. But something like Umbrella I thought needed to sound as warm as possible, but yet as aggressive as possible too. So that was sort of like the main challenge on this.
So what did you do to the synth lines to make them sound warm?
The synth lines, it's purely EQ. Now on that, I got a lot of the Neve stuff that I ran all the keyboards through, and all that really was, EQ through the Neves and a lot of board EQ as well. So anyway, to break down more of the sound, when I got it, it was a good rough when I got it, but I noticed that they put a lot of emphasis on the delays, even in the rough. So I knew that it was something cool going on in the back, and if I could emphasize that would actually be a cool thing to do. So I remember using the Waves doubler plugin on the return of my delay and reverb. And the reason why we did that was to sort of like, as you hear the song, even when you put headphones on, you feel like there's a phasing thing going on with the delays. Like what I ended up doing is on a stereo delay, panned it hard left and right. On the right was an eighth note delay with hardly any, if not maybe no feedback. And then on the left side had some feedback so that it sort of had this effect.
It was a quarter note on the left
And
side?
it was a quarter note, yes. It was an eighth and a quarter stereo. And to make it even further wider, I ended up using this doubler to just sort of make it a little more lush too. And the reverb, I know that when they came to me, it came with a couple of reverbs and they were good, but I had it sort of my own, and then we ended up using the AMS reverb and the Lexicon 480, of course, classic reverbs. So just try to mimic the fact that it was sort of swimming in a weird way. On some of it, when they came to me, it came with a couple compressors, which then I sort of found what they were doing before and did my own. On this one, I know on the lead vocal, I ended up using a TubeTech CL1B followed by Avalon 2044 to sort of get the Avalon 2044, again, Silk comes to mind when that EQ, it's got really nice highs, and she just felt right for her. And on the de-essing, I ended up just doing a 902 on this, on DBX, which captured most of the stuff that I wanted to get rid of. And then on the drums, basically, they added, again, during the recording or the rough mixing, some EQs, which I kept a couple of them, but on others, I ended up using a lot of Neves. Again, some APIs, outboard API 550A, especially on those kicks, to sort of, help the sample, because the sample was very apparent, and it was all, again, sounding like the drums that were added sort of surrounded that sample. On this, I used the 2044s, Avalon 2044s. Big fan of those. They're not the fastest release, but they got really nice attack on them. So I'm a big fan of the Avalon 2044 compressor. I also, every once in a while, I'll do a parallel compression where I'll bring the state level on the fader and send it to a bus and sort of bring the return and EQ the return completely different to add a little bit of depth. And then I'll have on that insert I'll have like a Pultec EQP1A, and depending on how much low I want, I just add a little bit and just bring the return up and compress it with the gates, and when it works, you get that nice combination of the source and the return being slightly different to give you that not delay but sort of that depth that something like this will probably need anyway, because it's the sample and everything else around it. If you have it right on, then sometimes it cancels out. So it's nice to, once you have a sample like this, to add a little bit of depth, especially on the low end. But basically on the bass, I ended up using this R bass, which is a really good plugin in my opinion, when you want to capture some of that real sub. Sometimes you can't get it with EQ, but it's one of the best plugins if you ever want to capture controlled sub. If you listen to the actual final mix, we got a meta flanger in there. And a meta flanger is actually one of those plugins that it's a utility plugin where you just, I love the plugins that you just bring up and they sound good. And the meta flanger is a perfect example of a plugin that you want a flanger, you bring it up, there's a flanger. So we used it on some of her vocals, and let's see, let's go to this track here. And I know that in the bridge is a really, really cool piano part that I wanted to play for you guys. And it's that. And I remember this, we used the REQ6. As you can tell, we're like, again, not being shy about it, we're bringing down 10 dB of 90, we're adding 12 dB of 12K, and
let's hear it with and without it.
Yeah, that was with, and this is without. It's a little darker. And that's with. You hear more of the keys, you hear more of the, especially that high end that we're using a lot. On some of this, the great thing about taking this 10 dB 90, it's so transparent, but it does get rid. If we were to play it up on main monitors, you hear that rumble that gets in the way, the dirty stuff that you don't really need on a sound like this. So the REQ series definitely has, it's really, really cool to take that out and without taking your low end. As you can hear, this doesn't take your low end out when you put it in and you bypass it. Might want to play with taking that out, and it's still there. So that was Umbrella.